it's time to do something really important this morning, to pray. Today we join believers around the country to pray for America, emphasizing the need of individuals to place their faith in God and to pray for the future hope of this country. What distinguishes America from almost every other government in the world? As Americans, as our founders made it clear, we don't get rights from our government, do we? We give our government rights. It doesn't work the other way, and that makes us unique. You may have heard some national leaders say that America is not a Christian nation. But it's an undeniable truth that this nation was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. You know, and the founders have said many times, it is not designed to work, and it will not succeed otherwise. Just as a car is designed to run on gasoline, we know that if you put water in a gas tank, it won't work, will it? It will destroy the engine. And that's what happens if we ever reach the point where our country is run differently than perceived by our founding fathers. Here's just a couple of samples that Pam picked out she thought would be meaningful. Comments by our founding fathers in that regard. Blaze Tratus, did I see you without glasses? Why didn't you sign in as an elected official? Thank you for coming here today. George Washington in 1783, letter to the governors of the states. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you preside in his holy protection. Thomas Jefferson, God who gave us life, gave us liberty. These liberties are a gift from God. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever. The doctrines of Jesus are simple and tend to all the happiness of man. James Madison, religion is the basis and foundation of government. We have been encouraged to feel in the guardianship and the guidance of that almighty being whose power regulates the destiny of nations. Benjamin Franklin, who everybody says is a theist, here is my creed. I believe in God, the creator of the universe, that he governs it by his providence, and that he ought be worshipped. President Garfield, if the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise, the culture, and the morality of this nation did not aid in controlling the political forces. And finally, Abraham Lincoln, from his campaign speeches to the Gettysburg Address, he referenced God so many times. I mean, you can't count them. And as an aside, I got to tell you, when the curator at the Library of Congress told me to my face that Abraham Lincoln was an atheist, I almost dropped dead. So we need to remember these words. And we need to remember what the founders really had in mind, as so many people attempt to rewrite history and redirect the direction of our great nation. John Jay, he really went all the way. Listen what John Jay. Now, this is the first Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Providence has given to our people the choice of their rulers, and it is the duty, as well as the privilege, and the interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers. Now that's a Chief Justice. That's a Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Kind of like today, right? Yes, our forefathers were involved in church ministry, and the founders who put their signatures on the Declaration weren't just clergymen. They were church officers, they were elders, managers, and even founders of Bible societies. And today's church leaders must also be involved in the process. Each time I've sought elective office at the state, local, and federal levels, it's been the result of prayer and providence. I never set out to do any of those things, never intended to. Congressman Weldon can attest to that. It took some convincing. I say providence because in each of these series of events that followed, prayer was an improbable, timely, and mathematically impossible series of events that occurred and changed my no from yes. Time doesn't permit me to share them all with you. That they're funny and they're interesting, but they do take too long to tell all of you about. But the fastest, most unconventional and unexpected answer to prayer that I ever got was in 1975. A series of things happened and people started saying, you need to run for office. You need to be on that city council. I go, no, I really don't. You know, I just started a business. I don't have the money or the time to put in a campaign, and I'm not going to do it. You've heard that before, Dave, so a lot of you in this room have heard that before. Count me out. So a couple of days went by. I come home, and Katie says, hey, so-and-so, person I super-duper respect, called and said, you know, you really need to reconsider you need to run for office. I said, Katie, listen, you know and I know. We just started this business. I don't have the time, and I don't have the money. And I already said no. I don't feel called to do it. She said, well, just to be sure, how about we just pray about this and throw out a fleece? And I say, works for me. What have I got to lose? You know? So we prayed about it and just give us a fleece and said, amen. So I walk over to the desk in the den, sit down, and I start opening the mail. The very first letter, handwritten, William J. Posey, my address, no return address on the envelope. So I open it up, rip out what's inside, and it's a wanted poster from the FBI. Honest to goodness wanted poster. Somebody ripped this off a post office wall somewhere. Remember when they used to have them in the post offices? I don't know if they still do. It's a wanted poster, wanted, FBI, William J. Posey, and a picture of a guy who fortunately did not resemble me a whole lot. But I know our horse teeth ancestors were probably all related at some point, but this guy fortunately did not resemble me. And boom. So, the next day, I went down and paid my $100 filing fee, and we spent $100 on that campaign. We had $100 worth of FBI posters printed. It said, wanted, real big, FBI, pretty bold, and then it said 4 better ideas. Bill Posey, and of course I have my whole family in it. We were all wanted. And it said reward and what you could expect from my service in government. And it got attention. I mean, you know, everybody couldn't wait to see, they finally after that guy. I told you he was no good, you know, but I'd like to tell you that it was a winning strategy, but it wasn't. And following on the last day and only spending $100, we finished third in a 5-way race. And anyway, next time we spent $400, and we won. The other guy spent $4,000. So. Every story was kind of like that, you know, and inspired by the book, The Light and the Glory by Peter Marshall and David Manuel. Don't know how many of you read it. Wonderful book. But I think there was providence like that involved in every decision, although oftentimes it was more drawn out, and the messages were even stronger. We used that same wanted poster, by golly, for every campaign as long as we were on city council for 3 terms. But what I really want to reflect upon with you today is how far we have wandered in this country since the miracle in Philadelphia. And you say, hey, there's a book by that title, Miracle at Philadelphia. Yeah, there is. The subtitle is The Story of the Constitutional Convention, made in September 1787. And it's a great book. It's a great read. And it is mathematically improbable, almost inconceivable that the founders could get together and do what they did in the time they did it, in the way they did it, that they had such foresight. Clearly there had to be some kind of divine providence in with them. You know, since the 70s, I've been a fan of David Barton. Most of you know David Barton, wall builders in Waco, Texas. I remember when he used to have a television show on Saturday mornings. I don't know how many of you remember that. He used to come on right before Tony Brown's Black Journal. And I used to watch those two shows back to back, good shows. David Barton back then was just a skinny kid with coal black hair. I was too. And, times have changed. Big admirer of David. I think David is the foremost authority on our founding fathers in this country, on the spiritual heritage of this nation. I think he's second to none. He has personally the third largest collection of original founding fathers documents to support the things that he says, if there's ever any doubt. And I'm so pleased that David oftentimes gives tours of the Capitol for ministerial associations. Some of you have been before. I hope sometime in your life, every single one of you will get to do that. It is inspiring. It's awesome. And I think so much, he does it after hours because in the Capitol it's so noisy. You go into the rotunda and he takes his little laser just like he used to do when he was on television, and he'll go around all the time. He'll show you in those giant, huge portraits in the rotunda, he'll show you details in those pictures that you've never read about in any other book. And secular history makes no mention of. But he'll just make your heart sing. He'll awe you. He'll awe you with the knowledge and the tradition and the faithfulness of our founders. Those tours are so good. He's given them a couple times. He has to book them in advance, and twice he's had a tour where we weren't in session. And I thought his tours were important enough that I've flown up there, walked him through to get his group in, got on a plane, and come home. I mean, that's how impressive I think these things are now. I love the way David starts his tour. When you take a David Barton tour, and you can see a lot of it on his site if you Google David Barton or Wall Builders, he begins his tours in the crypt. That's underneath the Capitol, underneath the rotunda down the bottom, where they have the center of D.C. marked. And there's a bunch of statues in there. When you go to the Capitol, you see statues not just in Statuary Hall. They outgrew that long ago. But they're all over the Capitol and the Visitor Center now. Every state's allowed to put in 2 statues. Florida, we have the guy that invented air conditioning and one of the last generals to surrender in the Civil War. But some, and God bless the guy that invented air conditioning. I mean seriously. But he was a doctor, Weldon says. But some have more patriotic themes. And David Barton starts his tour in the crypt at a statue of a gentleman named Peter Muhlenberg. Now the statue looks kind of like this. It looks like Michelangelo David with clothes on, And you wonder, who's Peter Muhlenberg? Put in there by Pennsylvania. But Peter Muhlenberg, before the Revolutionary War, preached in Virginia. And he was preaching a sermon on Ecclesiastes. It was time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace, a time for war. And he said, and now's the time for war unless you want to live under this tyrant forever. Whereupon he removed his clerical robe with his Revolutionary soldiers, officers, epaulets on, etc. And over 300 men followed him out of the church to fight the revolution. They were the Virginia's 8th Regiment. I know that's on all the textbooks we teach our kids in school. Another thing that people usually don't get to see when they tour the Capitol is the Supreme Court, the original Supreme Court. The original Supreme Court is under the Senate chamber, which used to be the House chamber. David says they put it underneath the elected officials for a reason. But he talks about the people that sat there at the time and describes each of them and talks about some of the cases that came before the Supreme Court. And my favorite one is the case of Vidal versus Girard Estate. And the richest man in colonial America, his name was Stephen Girard. If you Google richest men in American history, you'll get the images of 20 people the New York Times adjusted for inflation. And Stephen Girard's number 5, Bill Gates is number 6. This guy was pretty wealthy in colonial times. When he left a large portion of his estate to the United States government to build a school for poor children in Pennsylvania. There was no public education then. Of course, you can imagine what his heirs thought, or supposed heirs. They contested the will. They got nowhere in court. They said it's signed, sealed, delivered, it's okay. They finally got Daniel Webster to come out of retirement and take the case. He got it to the Supreme Court. He pled their case. He pled their case for 3 days, during which time one of the justices literally died. At the end of the day, the Supreme Court ruled that we cannot set aside this will. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. And you can Google this online, it's inconceivable to us that this could meet the requirement that he had for this school, that no religion be taught. The Supreme said that, in their opinion, it was inconceivable for them that the U.S. government would ever support a school where the Bible was not welcome. So we've had some changes in history, haven't we? Going to have to wrap this up, and I want to ask that you be sure and pray not only for our Congress, obviously, but also the members we have in Tallahassee and their staffs. And let's also pray for our county commissioners and our city officials and their staffs. And special prayers for our pastors. We have some bold pastors who are not afraid to speak the truth and righteous, and we have some that are still pretty timid, that are still worried about political correctness. And we need to pray that they'll have strength to stand for something.